In our modern world, social media platforms keep people around the globe informed and in touch. So how did people in Victoria keep in touch in the early 1900s? As V. Cooper explains, instead of an app, there was a club for that.
This is the first photo of the club, 1929, 1930, somewhere around there. This is on the steps of the Legislative Building.
This historic photo, preserved in the Royal BC Museum archives, represents Victoria's first shortwave radio club.
In the 1920s, after all the Marconi experiments, people around the world got very interested in shortwave radio. And so in 1929, when he started the club in Victoria, there was a great deal of interest in it.
He is the club founder, John Lawrence.
He had been invalided out of the war. He had terrible arthritis and he was crippled, and he took up shortwave radio.
So what was required to join?
The shortwave radio hams, as they're called, they built and operated their own equipment, and they were licensed. They had to know Morse code, they had to know something about electronics, and they actually took an exam to license themselves. So they're completely different from the amateur, non-licensed people like CB radio people.
Early minutes mention a special vote held to allow women in the club,
so that John Lawrence's wife Patty could join.
Club members had a lot of fun.
Primarily a social club as well. They got together, they did picnics, excursions, they set up transmitters at Mount Doug, they built themselves a clubhouse.
And there was romance over the airwaves too.
The young lady from Victoria met up with a man from Yakima over the radio, and they eventually got married.
The memorabilia stretches across decades.
In 1963 they got permission to have their call signs on their license plates.
These stickers and postcards are from the early 50s.
These would be people from Washington, that's their call sign.
All of these records could have been lost in 1986.
The Secretary-Treasurer, a man called David Scholes, saved all this material. He also loaned it or gave it to a man named Robert Jewsbury, who was writing a history of the club. And shortly after, David Scholes' house burned down. So if the records had not been loaned to Jewsbury for his book, the records wouldn't exist anymore.
And now preserved as a part of BC's history.
This Week in History, brought to you by the Royal BC Museum, bringing British Columbia's stories together.